Hello, and welcome back to the Burnt Pancakes podcast. I am so glad to have you here for another momversation. If you were with us last week, I talked all about baby names. Well, today we're moving to the total opposite end of the motherhood spectrum, and I'm speaking with Esther Goetz. She is the author, influencer, and founder of Mom of Bigs, and she's going to share with us some tips and wisdom on what it's like when your bigs move off and go to college. I had such a great conversation with her. She is full of so much great advice and wisdom for not just mom of bigs, but mom of littles who have this in their future. So stay tuned for my momversation with Esther. Well, Esther, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me on. This is so great.
I have been a follower of yours for a while, even though I don't have bigs yet, but I feel like your content is so helpful to moms. I love it. So if you could start us off, tell us how old your kids are and how you got started with Mom of Bigs.
Yeah, so I say I have 4 grownish and flownish kids because that's how it is. Some are more flown than others, but I've had them come in and out. That's kind of how the big kid years are. They're in their 20s. So yeah, I have 4 in, one is 30. So yeah, I am like moved on to that next stage of young adults, which is crazy to me. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Like when they say it goes fast, like you can say, yeah, it did go fast. I'm starting to get glimpses of, oh, it's starting to speed up a little bit. Like now I know what they mean by that. It's coming.
Right. I love that quote that's like the days are long and the years are short.
Yes.
Because the days are long. When you have younger kids, or if your kid's having a hard time, no matter how old they are, I still have some very long days with my kids. But then it's like, oh my gosh, how is it already summer?
Yes.
Or
yeah. I mean, this summer, the days have been very long. I will say that. But now, like literally, they started school today. I just sent my middle to kindergarten and oh, now he's in school and he will be in school for till he's 20 something. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So what made you start Mama Bigs? When did you start it? What
actually, I started it because I have bigs, and it was actually my hardest and favorite stage. So 13 to 25 is what I said, 13 to 26 when they come off your health insurance is kind of like my niche. And I started it when I was kind of in the throes of that. And pretty much my kids were like, Mom, you've got to do something. This is crazy. So my oldest daughter, especially, we were going to write a book together, and then she became a teacher like you. And, life got really busy. So she was like, don't wait for me. You need to do this by yourself. And I really felt very much so about the fact that there are tons of moms. I mean, the mom bloggers, the mom help for 0 to 5 is so saturated. And then we get to these, I call them the underground years of teens and young adults, where you do kind of go underground in many ways properly because you want to respect your kids' privacy. They're a person too that may be on social media. And so you do it for good reasons, but then there's really not such good reasons that we go underground. We're embarrassed. Our kid is acting out, and they're big things that they're doing now. They might be struggling with an addiction or a mental health issue or an eating disorder or something that's harming them. And everybody else's kids look like they're doing great.
Yes.
And so it gets weird. It's not like little things you can fix anymore. It's kind of these bigger things. So moms tend to go underground for both good and bad reasons and feel very isolated. And I had gotten permission. My kids were like, have at it. As long as you don't berate us, which I never would.
Yeah.
But as long as you talk about you, you are more than welcome to talk about all this stuff about us, as long as you talk about you.
Right.
And that's kind of because it is about us. It's not about our kids, even in the way younger years, middle years, and then especially in the big years, just the ways that we need to be treating ourselves and our relationship with ourselves, and then our relationship with our kids.
Right, right. Oh, I like that. The underground years. Yeah. It kind of,
Yeah, it just makes sense.
yeah. And they do
And the
talk
bus
about,
stops go away. The bus stop stuff goes away.
Mhm.
There's just those natural things that happen for moms of littles
Yeah.
that just don't. Maybe you're sitting on sidelines, and that's probably about it, or at dance recitals,
Hmm.
but it just gets funky.
Yeah. I mean, I am looking forward to like the older kid years. I love the little ones, but like with my oldest, he's 9 now. But it's like there's fun stuff coming, different stuff that,
Yeah.
I'm
They're
enjoying that.
people. I mean,
They
they're always
are.
people, but
Oh, people with big personalities. Like, I'm going to need you when he's a teenager because I am seeing like signs already that I'm like, oh, it's no longer little problem. Like, he's got big attitude. Like,
yeah,
who,
that's
how to
good.
navigate that. Okay.
Yeah.
So mine just went off to kindergarten today, but a lot of moms are getting ready to send their kids off to college. Like, that's a big milestone. What tips do you have for those moms?
Well, that is absolutely 100% my sweet spot. To be honest with you, this transition from high school to college, so I call them like birthing adults, like newborn adults or baby adults. The
Yeah.
transition period is my sweet spot. I have a whole program called Roots and Wings devoted to those moms in particular who are for the first time, see, they're sending their kid off to college. I don't even care if it's their first, second, last one.
Mhm.
It's going to be different for each kid that they send off because they have a different relationship. So I always say there's a few things, I'll just give a little bit of highlights. Is grief is a major factor here. And that is because of the underground years and people being like, oh, your kid's going to be fine, all that. Moms really grieve. The
Mm.
most DMs I get are the moms who are sending their kids to college. And they are just a wreck. They've seen their kid every day, their whole life, except for camp and,
Right.
sleepovers and stuff
Right.
like that. And then suddenly
They're gone.
they aren't seeing them at all. And they're not even, they don't even know like who their kids' friends are. They don't have the day in and day out, just, hey, mom, or whatever. You don't know what kind of boundaries they want you should have. Are you giving them too much help? Are you not helping them enough? All of
Mhm.
those things. So the grief is huge. And then the second is maintaining really, really healthy boundaries. Ooh, that's my roots and wings, right? So my mantra is giving our kids the roots of unconditional love and the wings of freedom to be
Oh,
completely themselves.
that's
Right. So
hard.
that is all of Moms of Big's world.
Mhm.
Because you want them to be a safe place to land, but you also need to lovingly help
Let them
them
go.
fly, right, and kick them out of the nest and all that kind of stuff. So we just that is hard. That making really healthy boundaries with kids and for yourself and for them is, I mean, I don't know if that's a tip. That's something we have to long and slowly unpack. And then the other thing is allowing yourself to be in the position of a beginner because you've never, I mean, this is for all the stages, but especially this one. You've never, ever been a mom of an adult kid
Right.
who's on their own. And so that's why I say it's like this
Birthing a
long
new one.
labor again
Mhm.
into birthing an adult. And
Yeah.
so allow yourself to be a beginner. Don't be surprised that whatever worked in the past is not working for you now. They might not return your texts. They're free. They're making all their decisions about what they're doing every day. They're not sitting at dinner. They're picking friends. They're going to professors. They're living in another state, perhaps, or at least another place.
Mhm.
So those are like my three things I would say, like the grief, maintaining really good boundaries. And then my third thing is allowing yourself to be a beginner. And you're going to make so many mistakes.
Oh,
And that's part
I
of it.
I can't even imagine. Because like when I went off to college, I didn't even go off to college. I lived at home. I went to the college down the street. But you feel like I'm older now. I'm an adult. But
Mhm.
in mom's eyes, you're probably still that precious little baby that you had, like the little one. So it's hard, like allowing them to go. but still knowing like they still need me. Like, they're going to come back.
They are. I call those the in and out years. They're rough because they're home for 4 or 5 weeks, then they're gone. It's just like they're suddenly home and all their stuff is around, so they're suddenly gone. It's an interesting time, that transition.
I think right around Christmas time, you put out a bunch of content about like what moms experience when the kids come home to visit. Like, hey kids, don't or let your mom smell you because she just misses your smell, like just stuff like that. And you just don't realize when you have them at home and you're crazy busy, like they are going to be gone one day. And like I tell my husband all the time, like, we're going to miss doing their laundry. We're going to miss them destroying our house. Right.
Right. I mean, to be honest, I don't necessarily miss the mess of the laundry.
So wait, your house, you have new things again, right? You can have new things.
Yeah, I do. We do have new things again. It's kind of funny.
That's why I'm like, when they all move out, we're getting a new couch.
But they come home so much. I mean, I'm very close. And so they love being around, and they do come home for weekends and weeks and 3 weeks and this and that. So it's
right. So that's another thing too. I'm like, what can we as moms do to make sure they want to come home? You know, like how do I have all boys. So it kind of scares me thinking like, what if my like bond with them is not so strong that they're like, see ya, mom, I'm out. Like my oldest, like from day one, he's been so independent, like just charges ahead. I'm like, what if he doesn't want to come back? Like, how do you make it so that how do you provide that home where they do want to come back?
Right. Well, I have 2 thoughts there. And the first thought is, comes from my mother-in-law. She has been the person in my life that has done this so well. And it's just, I have this little quote, like, don't be the mom your kids love, be the mom your kids love being around.
Oh.
And so she makes me love being around her. She's safe. She's kind. She lights up when I come into the room. I'm the only person there when I'm talking, and I just can't even tell you what she's done. And my own kids, like that's their grandmother, and they want to be with her. Like, so it's like, as long as you are the mom that your kids want to be around. I ask my kids this all the time. Am I still the mom you guys want to be around? And that's like, that non-judgmental, curious attitude where they're where you are very emotionally safe. You can't make the world safe, but you can make yourself safe. And that's that when people are like, oh, I want my kids to be safe. I'm like, well, the one thing you can do is make yourself safe. All that's going out there in the world that we have zero control over. We can't do anything there, but we can be a safe place, 100% safe. So can't control the world, but we can control ourselves. So that is the one. And then underneath that is my second point. I've talked about this endlessly to everybody that I know, is the posture of inviting and not demanding.
Okay.
And that how
do we master that? Yes.
Underlying root of that is respect. So one of the questions we asked our 4 kids this was like a year ago, I think, at the holidays. We asked them, hey, what 3 things would you say you took away from Dad and I? Like, what would you say was our biggest, like, and they all had different answers, except all 4 of them said the same thing, and it was respect.
Wow.
And I was so happy about that. But I have a partner, I'm married to a man that is highly respectful of them and of me. And I felt very strongly from little on, all your people who are listening who have littles, like, begin respecting them from the begin, like immediately. Respect that they're different from you, respect that they have a voice, all of those things, that they're a human being that you are walking alongside. You are not over them. You are not, in charge. I mean, you're in charge of their safety, but not their humanness, is what I always say.
Oh, I love
so
that.
Respect is a really big thing. And one time I was with my daughter, and she crouched down on the floor to talk to a little kid. And I do that. And I asked her we got in the car and I said, what made you do that? She said, Mom, you do that all the time. And I said, oh, well, my dad did that all the time. Like, it's just an
Like get
automatic
on their level.
get on their level. Like when I'm talking to a little kid, I just go down. I call it get down on the floor. And I learned that from my dad. That was one thing he passed on to me. And then I guess I passed on to my kids without knowing. And it is that root of respect. And this is where the invite, not demand is. When you move into these bigger kid years, I think when they're little, it's just like, hey, we got to get in the car. We got to do this. We got to do that. We're going to, because you can't leave them. They don't have tons of choices. I mean, you can't. You can respect, you can give them as much agency as you possibly can safely. Right?
Yes.
But that, as they grow up, they have more and more and more agency. And so you move slowly into this. I think you always should be invitational, but you have to move slowly into this place of we invite everybody, but we never demand that you be here. And I saw this begin to play out as the teen years went on, and especially when my kids got their licenses. I said to our kids once they got their license, and even somewhat in the older teen years, I think it was like sophomore, junior, senior year. I don't even know. It was kind of in those high school years where I would be like, hey, I'll have dinner every night, but, and you're welcome to eat. This is when we're going to eat and you're welcome to be here. There'll always be enough. But if you're not here, that's fine, but we're not going to pay for your dinner to go somewhere else. Yes. Like we did that with ice cream on vacation. Hey, we're meeting for ice cream at 9:00 at such and such an ice cream parlor. Want to come? Great. We'll pay for it if you come. Like that was just, it was like invitational. And then it gets really sticky as they turn 18 and 19, or like they don't want to come home for spring break, or they, then you've gone through this. I've gone through this. You meet somebody and they invite you to their house for the holidays because you have a significant other now like this has happened with my kids. Like, oh my goodness, I'm not coming home for Easter or Christmas or whatever it was, my birthday. And I remember being like, okay, like you're more than welcome to come home. Always, our door's always open, but I'm never going to manipulate you and make you feel guilty, make you feel like I'm trying to control you. Use that like, well, I'm gonna miss you. Like all that. It's so manipulative because I want them to feel free. And one of the greatest things that happened was my husband had a big birthday last summer. And so about a year ahead, we had to plan it. We told everybody, this is what we're doing. We're going to get a house and we're letting you know a year ahead of time. A couple of them were just out of college, trying to find jobs. And the other ones were working. And we're like, here's the invitation. You and your significant others, whoever you want, you can come. We have enough space. We're getting a house big enough. But absolutely zero pressure. All four of them were like, we'll do whatever it takes to get there. Aww. And so I just thought, well, and if one of them couldn't come, I don't know what, like, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And so there's just a freedom then that they're choosing us because, well, they're coming because it's their choice.
Yeah.
And isn't that true love?
Yeah. Yeah.
Love is a choice.
You never took it personally. You know that they're doing their life and you can put yourself in their shoes. But I love that it's like, my house is always open.
Yeah. Because I mean, you can grieve and you can cry in the shower. It's very
talk
sad.
To your significant other and let him know. Yes.
Right.
It's okay to have those feelings,
grieve.
But let them have their wings. Yeah. That's why it's like, that's a sign that you did a good job, that they're out in the world and like you freed them. But yet that's the hardest job to do.
Oh my goodness. I know, but I don't want to underemphasize the grief that comes along with it. Because I think that that's what a lot of people are like, oh, they don't have to. And I think there's room for both. There's room for you to grieve and really miss them. And at the same time, know you're doing what's right. Like doing what's right is often very hard.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so true. Like, I feel like I'm already grieving the fact that one day my boys are going to leave me. Like, I already know it's coming from the day I found out I was having a boy. I'm like, one day he's going to leave me. Okay. I've got
I
18
know.
or so years to prepare myself for that.
But just to encourage you on the boy front, my son, he's so cute. He's having a big birthday and he lives pretty far in Florida. Called me like 6 weeks ago and said, Mom, I want to come home for my birthday. And he's bringing his
Oh
girlfriend.
my
And he was like,
gosh.
can I have my friends over for a big barbecue? And
Absolutely.
I haven't seen some of his friends for a long time. And I was like, oh,
Of
so
course.
lovely. So
Yes.
now I'm planning this huge thing like for
Oh,
him. But he was like, I want to be with you
and
guys.
he
So
initiated it.
and he initiated it.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how when you have that posture of inviting, then they start to invite either themselves home or they invite you to their place.
Wow.
So
I
don't
love
be
too,
too
you can
discouraged.
start that early on because it's like I thought, oh, okay, Mama Biggs, I have years to go, but that respect starting at that early age.
Mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
with my 3-year-old, I do stand in front on top of him and say, I'm no, why don't I get down to his level and just let him know, I'm
Yeah.
with you. I'm with you. I think that's great advice. Absolutely.
Yeah. Invitation, not demanding. And as young as you can do that safely.
Exactly. Because this morning he was crying,
Yeah,
and I'm like, well, I can't leave you here when I'm dropping
you
off your
can't.
brothers. You do have to come with us.
And there was a time I remember when my son was 14 and the guys were, my husband's family always went on a men's fishing weekend. And like 2 days before he was like, I don't want to go. I'm like, well, guess what? I've already planned a girls' weekend with your sisters. And
Awesome.
when you're 18, you're never going to have to go on men's fishing weekend ever again, or even next year. But this is all planned. So you're going in the car.
Yes. You will, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
And it was
And did
fine.
he have
But
a fun time? He enjoyed it.
he did. But I don't know if he's ever gone. I don't know. I mean, COVID kind of happened, but I
Yeah.
think he went once and didn't go another. But it was like that's why it's like that long, slow journey
Yes.
to
Slowly
independence.
releasing that rope. I'm like,
Yes,
on
yes.
you.
And I gave him hope. I said to him, only a couple more years, or maybe even next year, but
Mhm.
this is already planned, and we can't
You
do
got
this
it.
2 days. 2 days.
So what are some tips you have? Because in today's society, a lot of kids stay home until they're, in their 20s, even
Mhm.
longer. It's more expensive to move out.
Yes.
What are some tips for parents who their kids are adults, quote unquote adults, but they're living at home? So how do you manage those boundaries and that
Well, I
fit?
had one. We called it getting a few bonus years.
Yes.
He graduated from college right when COVID hit. So he just moved home and he had a job and it was just hard. Like he was like, we didn't want to
Right.
do all that moving.
It sometimes
And
makes more
plus,
sense to them.
yeah. And plus he was more of a homebody and he was
Mhm.
trying to save some money and stuff. So I have one that did that. And again, I think the root of respect was really there. Not only that we would respect him in his space, but that he would respect us in our space. And I kind of continued hey, I make dinner, but you don't ever have to come up. But you're old enough now that you need to
Make
let
your
me
own.
know way ahead of time and you make your own. I mean, he
Mhm.
could do whatever he wants, right, with his money. But I had to know way ahead of time. It
Right.
wasn't, I was like it could make a difference for me, like what I spend at the grocery store and stuff like that.
Yes.
Or you have to, the leftovers. And that's all dependent on the kid. He wouldn't eat a leftover. And so I'm like, well, then I need to know that, like, my daughter would eat a leftover all day long, where I was like, So I think we just treated him the way we expected him to treat us, which
Mhm.
was, if we're going out, if we're leaving for 2 days or 3 days, we're not just going to like bolt and leave. And he's like, where did my parents go?
Right.
So we
Let us
just,
know.
yeah, it was like, we're roommates and we would tell our roommates, we're leaving for 3 days. Can you do X, Y, and Z? You're still here. Can you water the plants? Can you do whatever? And then he also, when he left, we were like, we'd like to know if you're going away for a few days, just so that we don't just wake up. Now, did he have to tell us when he was like going this? No. I mean, that we were so far removed from that,
Right.
because you do have those college years kind of where
Yes.
you're
Transition
transitioning.
you. Mhm.
But it is weird when they're gone for 4 years or 5 or whatever, and then they come back.
And they're
Um,
not that same senior in high
they're
school
not
now.
that,
Oh, you're
no.
20-something-year-old.
Yeah.
Used to
But
doing it on your own.
I think like we made some really interesting boundaries. He paid rent, he paid for
Mhm.
utilities. He had to have a job, those kind of things. Like we had some really clear boundaries related to him living with
You just
us. And we
sat down and had a little talk before you
yes,
all
we did.
decided.
We did talk about exactly like what the expectations were and what his expectations were of us.
That's super important because as
Right.
parents, I think sometimes I'm so like, I'm in charge, let me
Yeah,
tell you
no.
that you forget. Yeah, you're right. It's like a back and forth thing.
Right. And I think there's this like marble analogy where you're constantly throwing marbles in a jar of trust and respect or taking them out. And
Mm,
so I think, um, even navigating that, we were also beginners with that. He was a beginner. He'd never been an
mm,
adult with a job
yeah.
living with his parents, and we'd never had that. And so it was just like, hey, we're going to throw this marble of respect, and you're going to throw one back, and we're going to try to live. Was it perfect? No. And after 2.5 years, he was like, hey, I don't feel good about living here
I'm
with my
ready.
parents anymore. I'm out. And that was great. And then he moved out for a year. And then, just as big kids do, he got a new apartment with a friend, and he didn't make sure that that new apartment was began before the other apartment ended. So we had him again for a month.
Oh, fun. There you go. Welcome home. He's
I know,
invited.
it's just that's why I joke that it's grownish and
Yeah.
blondish.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
One of my favorite grocers at the grocery store. I tend to just chat it up with them, but
That's
I love her. She has two older kids, but her daughter's staying home because she's like, she wants to go to school. She wants to, so, but she was like, she pays for our groceries. Like she's in charge of all the grocery shopping because we didn't want her just to be home. We wanted her to like be contribute to this. Like she had a roommate. And I was like, that is so beautiful. But she's like, she is getting her degree. She's doing this. And I was like, I
yeah.
need to have you on. I want to hear more about this. That's
Yeah, it's so
Mhm.
wise, I think. And the boundaries are going to be different for every single
Mhm.
person with every single child,
Yes.
right?
Especially
Everything
siblings are
is
probably so different.
right. Every situation is absolutely unique. And I've really come to learn that about motherhood just in general. I mean, life just in general, that I like to tell my stories, and I call that being descriptive. But I don't want to say you should do that, which is prescriptive. Just because this worked for me, you have to try it on and see if it works for you. That's also
Right.
another big tip for having kids. I can tell you, my older kids, I can tell my little kids, this is what works for mommy. When I'm panicking, I do box breathing. That's what
Yes.
I do. That's something, that's a tool I have. See if you try it on, see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, don't use
Mhm.
it. And so I think that we can do that just in general in life with other moms, and then even too with our kids.
Mm. Now, when your kids moved out, I feel like a big part of my job would be over. It's not like we're done being moms, but like like right now, I'm like, we're going to football practice. I'm packing lunches. I'm doing this. Did you do anything to like did you pick up any new hobbies? Did you do anything for you knowing my kids are gone and I might need to fill that void?
I would say that I've always been the kind of person, my kids joked that like I was their mom, but I was also like all these other things. Like I never really, I lost myself quite a bit when they were little, I would
Mhm.
say. And then as they went into elementary school, I started to do quite,
Find yourself again. Yeah.
even preschool though, I just am very independent. And so sometimes they complain that I don't have enough time for them. They're like, Mom, what? You're so busy. Like they'll be like, are you coming to visit? I'm like, no, sorry, I can fit you in. And they're just like, seriously. But yeah, I think that's really valuable. I have more time, like the writing thing that I do. I'm an author. Obviously, I have more time to just devote to that because I'm not running to practice. But I also have it's weird too, because when I am visiting or they're home for a visit, it's not just like they're there and I'm doing my own thing. It's like all consuming. Like when they're living in the house, they're doing their own stuff, you're kind of
Mhm.
around. So I feel a little bit more like it's just different. And I happen to have one of my children doesn't live too far away, and she loves to come home for the
Oh, that's nice.
weekend.
That's like me. That's like me.
I mean, she could be with me a lot. And so and we only live like a couple hours away. So we're just navigating that because she's the one that's like, hey, can I call you? And yeah, so I think it just does change, but I have big chunks of time when I'm alone. And then when we're together, I have like no time.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I'm fully there or fully off. So again, it's just different. And the book that I'm writing with my friend Melissa Neeb from Never Empty Nest, our book is called Moms Never Stop Momming. And
Yeah.
at the end of a lot of days, my husband will be like, so who did you hear from today? And I'll be like, this one needed their social security number. This one was
Yeah.
crying about her job. And then this one needed the Netflix password. And, and then, this guy locked his keys in his car and was wondering, what do you do about this now?
Wow. So you never stop momming.
No. And I love it. I mean, I'm glad that
Right.
I'm their first call.
Feels good to feel needed. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad, like, I don't want them to be dependent on me, but I want them to feel like I'm a safe person for them to go to.
Right. Right.
I
That's
want
such
them
a
to
good
be
balance.
independent. And yet, what is that? That they feel unconditionally loved and that I'm safe, but that I'm always helping them or pushing them or whatever you want to say
Yeah.
towards agency and independence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm 42 and I still call my mom. I mean,
Oh,
my mom's a
yeah.
mile away from me, so I'm there a lot, but I still need her advice. And
Yeah, I know a friend of mine who's like 46, she has older kids and they said, when do she was talking to her dad and her daughter's like 22 and she was like, dad, when do kids stop calling their parents? And he was like,
never.
you're calling me on the phone to talk about something that's going on that's really hard for you.
Right, right. Never, never.
It was very cute. It was
That is
very cute.
Okay, another question I had. So for these young moms, there's tons of support. There's like breastfeeding support and mommy and me and mops. And then they get older and it just seems like, where do you find that support? So do you have ideas of where you can find your Mama Bigs tribe?
Yeah, so there is so much stuff for moms of smalls, as I call them. And there's not as much for the moms of middles, but one really great place that I actually am a contributing author to their online magazine for those middle years, I would say, is a website called Her View from Home. They have tons of authors you can follow. There's lots of resources there for that age range. I mean, it's really
I'm writing
great.
that down.
I know. And there's actually a book that came out. It's a bestseller now, an Amazon bestseller called So God Made a Mother. I'm actually a contributing author in that book that came out this spring. And it just like flew off the shelves because
Oh
it's a
my gosh.
lot of talking about
I
it.
think I have that one on my list. I feel like I've
Oh yeah.
seen
It's
I have a
purple.
whole list of books that I want to read.
And that's a really great book. And then there are people like me, not tons of people like me for the moms of big space. So I'm a good place to start.
Awesome.
And what I feel very strongly that in my Mom's a Big Space, it's not just my voice. One of the things I feel about my children and other people in general is just that some of the most powerful voices we have in the world are when we help other people find their voice. So I kind of view myself as match.com, like, hey, I'm a resource bringer. I have a couple resources, but I can't provide all of the resources. I'm not an expert. So like my website, if you go there and you click on my Moms of Bigs tab, I have all kinds of resources there, podcasts for people to listen to in this space, and even just general motherhood, and books for teens, college kids, the adult years, all of that I have there. I have some extra stuff that goes on. I have people you can follow there. All the people I completely trust that are like, some of them are mom coaches, some of them are authors, some of them are podcasters like you. And so, yeah, I have that. I try to provide that. And if you follow my page, you will see that I'm promoting. It's not just my writing. It's like other people's writing. And I tag people all the time because it's people I really value and have helped me on this journey. I mean, right? Isn't that what we're doing as moms? Isn't that our
Right.
goal? We're not perfect. sucking at this
Burning our first
sometimes.
pancake.
Right. The first, where we have the first pancakes, right? And all that stuff. And I think like we're not doing it well. And we really need other people's wisdom and support, cheerleading, all of that stuff for when we get it wrong and when we get it right.
Yes. Yes.
And and I love, I think that's why people appreciate what I do, is because I love vulnerability and I'm just putting myself out there. I mean, I'm like, hey, this is really awful. It's not like, oh, I've done all of this so well.
Oh, perfect.
You know, like I was on a Zoom call with my 2 girls last night and we were talking about it, and they were talking about just one way I had screwed up last week. My one daughter was telling my other daughter, yeah, well, she did this and she says she's not going to like help us. And then she's helping us. And then I literally, my daughter was like, please don't do my budget. And I was like, okay. And then I was like sneakily doing it. And then I sent it to her. And then I was like, I'm so sorry. I overstepped. Don't open that. Just disregard. And that's all we can really do is screw up. Say we're sorry. We're trying to learn. We're still learning. It gives them permission to screw up. It gives them the understanding that we're human, and then they can be human. And it's this beautiful dance of like insanity.
I love it. It is so awesome. And I just love, social media sometimes has such a negative thought about social media, but there is so much good on it. And I get so much out of your content.
Thanks.
So I am so glad you came on to share all of your wisdom with us.
Oh, well.
Got stuff coming in the next few years. So I'm going to keep following you. So thank you so much for coming on. Well, that's a wrap on another Momversation. I loved this chat with Esther. I know motherhood is going to come up with lots of challenges along the way, and having bigs brings up its own challenges, but I am so happy to know that there's tons of support out there for all of us moms. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean the world to me if you shared it with your friends, if you left me a 5-star review, subscribed to my YouTube channel, or came and said hi to me on social media. So you can find me at Burnt Pancakes with Katie. And as a reminder for all of you moms of littles who are struggling with potty training, I do offer one-on-one consultations as a certified potty trainer. So check out the description for all those details. So until next week's Momversation, I want to remind you that everyone burns their first pancake, so just keep flipping.